Fox News alert now. President Trump is on his way to Florida, and he may stop and talk to reporters after one of the most breathtaking moments in Oval Office history. President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance getting into an epic shouting match with Ukrainian President Zelenskyy as they tried to hash out a minerals deal for a peace deal with Russia.
You think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly what you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
Feel influenced.
We're going to feel very good and very
you,
strong. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Your country's in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look. If you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me.
For you what,
that wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden who was not a smart person. That was with Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins. The problem is, I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think?
What's this negotiation?
This is going to be great television, I will say that.
And indeed it was. President Trump kicking Zelenskyy out of the White House shortly after that, canceling their joint press conference. No rare minerals deal was signed, and the White House staffers, well, they eat the lunch that Trump and Zelenskyy were supposed to dine on. President Trump posting on Truth Social, it is amazing what comes out through emotion, and I have determined that President Zelenskyy is not ready for peace if America is involved, because he feels our involvement gives him a big advantage in negotiations. I don't want advantage, I want peace. He disrespected the United States of America and its cherished Oval Office. He can come back when he is ready for peace. And Zelenskyy will be talking to Bret Baier at 6 p.m. Eastern time tonight, just less than 1 hour from now. Jesse, this feels like one of those moments in history where we will all remember exactly where we were when we watched that go down. Now I'll ask you the question we're left wondering, will they get to a deal?
Hopefully. It's kind of like when you want to propose, so you go to the girlfriend's dad, you go into his house. Can I have your blessing? And he goes, well, do you have any money for a ring? Nope. Do you have a job? Nope. Do you have a house? Nope. And then you start arguing with the dad and he kicks you out of the house and you go back to the girlfriend. The girlfriend's like, well, how did it go? Not good. It did not go very well. Zelenskyy screwed up. 30 minutes before this happened, everything was fine. Everyone was getting along fine. And then a reporter asked Trump about aligning with Russia. Trump says, I'm just aligned with America, and I'm aligned with the world. And then Vance jumps in and he says, well, you know, you can talk tough and beat your chest, but that's not going to help us with diplomacy. And then Zelenskyy, out of nowhere, zeroes in on Vance. And he says, you don't know anything about diplomacy. What do you know about diplomacy? You can't negotiate with Putin. He can't be trusted. He violates ceasefires. Well, then what are we all doing here? Why did he fly all the way here to sign this mineral deal if you can't negotiate with Vladimir Putin? What's the whole point of this? We're not going to give Zelenskyy a security pact. It's not in America's interest to have to defend that country with American soldiers if Russia goes back in. The mineral deal is the best security that Zelensky's ever going to get. And if you didn't like the language of the deal, stay in Kiev. Hash it out for another week and then fly here. Don't fly here and get all emotional. We run the world. This is America's world. He's our proxy. This ends when we say it ends. It doesn't end when Zelenskyy, if he wants to go it alone, go it alone. I'm glad we helped him. Russia invaded. We got his back. At first, it was the right thing to do. But now it's not. Now the war's over, and he doesn't recognize it's over. And reality is going to eat this guy alive if he doesn't recognize this. If you were in the room when Roosevelt was telling Churchill to liquidate his colonies, I don't think it was all tea and crumpets. Or if you were Bush yelling at Musharraf when Al-Qaeda was in Pakistan, no. Or Bibi getting his ear chewed out by Joe Biden. This stuff happens all of the time behind the scenes. We were just lucky enough to have it happen right in front of the cameras.
You know, it was fascinating. Thank you for that, Jesse. Emily, when we were getting live reports from the White House, while Zelenskyy and Trump had finished this meeting, and we were waiting to see what happened next, Jackie Heinrich stepped up to the camera to give us a report and said she had learned that Zelenskyy was begging to stay but got kicked out. And shortly thereafter, we saw exactly that. We saw Zelenskyy very quickly after this concluded exiting the White House along with his staff.
Exactly. And to that point, there was a gap in time that was longer in reality than we saw on television because we had to ingest that footage, right? It wasn't live. So there was sort of a significant moment in between what we saw and Zelenskyy exiting the White House that I think portends the future of this relationship between those two, which is the need for an apology and an acknowledgement of the role the United States is playing. Now, I think what we saw was someone who has, for many years, bared the brunt, obviously, of Putin's aggression, and his exhaustion and his wit's end and his rage was showing. But for him to ascribe on the current administration's shoulders the utter failures and the invertebrate approach of prior administrations was so wrong. And the most wrong tactic was, in Vice President Vance's words, litigating it in front of the American media. That was not the time or place to have that outburst. And I think all it did was underscore for everyone watching, for the millions watching, how deeply fragile and important diplomacy is, and that it doesn't always look tidy. And for President Trump to sit there and for them to entertain that question, that pushback on, what do you know about diplomacy? And they said, look, there's a new sheriff in town. So I know that your experience with Putin has been such, but let us tell you what our experience has been. For that to be all played out in front of the American media live, and for President Zelenskyy to have, frankly, his sort of mercurial behavior always played out, always harnessing the American public's sentiment by way of the harnessing of American media is totally inappropriate in the Oval Office of the presidency of someone that you are trying to have on your side. And recall that the UK Defense Secretary who says, well, America needs to have that backstop. You know, we believe in upping all the spending, but we still need America to be the backstop. We don't have to be, actually. And economics is indeed the backstop that we're going to commit to. So here, what happens moving forward is that America needs to stay strong because we are signaling to Putin and China exactly what happens if you come on our turf and disrespect us.
You know, Jessica, a lot will be said about the public nature of this, these fiery exchanges happening in the Oval Office. And the many guests we had immediately following the breaking news, there were some who seriously embraced it and some who thought it's not a good look to have this happen on the global stage in such a public way. Where are you?
I think I could see both sides, I guess, of the public face of it. I think Jesse's right that usually this is hashed out in private, but this is a president who loves doing things in public, and he's a TV guy, and he made for great TV there. And we're going to talk more in the B block about the various reactions to it and how much this ultimately benefits Putin and how he was so excited to see this interaction. And I'm sure that is the case. But the idea that Zelenskyy, whose people have fought bravely for 3 years against a authoritarian adversary that invaded, that has taken an advantage at every single turn, has been nothing but a patriot, said even just last weekend that he would resign if it meant that they could get into NATO, right? That was after the accusation from President Trump, J.D. Vance, et cetera, that he was the one who's a dictator, that he was the one that it was Ukraine's fault that all of this happens, when we all know, or anyone who's being honest, that it was definitely Putin's fault. And Jesse's right. The moment where Zelenskyy gets animated is when J.D. Vance asks him to just take it, to just sit there and go along with the idea that Vladimir Putin wasn't the aggressor in this, or the idea that Vladimir Putin is a diplomatic partner. Vladimir Putin is not a diplomatic partner for anybody. So you had a patriotic world leader defending his people and defending the thousands of lives, tens of thousands of lives that have been lost to all of this.
Neither Stalin, neither's Mao. Sometimes you have to do deals with bad guys.
But
Jessica.
he's not. America in life has done some deals with some bad guys, but that isn't what's going on here. And Donald Trump revealed himself. I thought the most shocking part was that Trump goes on to say, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt. And people have been saying since the beginning of this, since Donald Trump came on the world stage, that he is aligned with Putin. We saw in Helsinki in 2018 when he stood up there and he sided with Putin over the intelligence agencies. He says, well, Putin told me he didn't do it. He told me he didn't meddle in the election. And then are you comfortable with an American president saying Putin went through a hell of a lot with me? Are they buddies?
I went through a hell of a lot with you, Jessica, with the Russia.
Okay, making a joke of it means that I made a valid point, just for the viewers at home.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Take it to Charlie.
So, obviously the whole thing was pretty amazing. It was great TV. It was pretty shocking. I've never seen anything like it. But one of the reasons it was so shocking and so amazing is because it's the first time we've ever seen an American president stand up and deal with the situation in Ukraine completely from an American perspective, standing up for American interests, American taxpayers' interests, Americans' strategic interests. And we've just never seen it. So it was kind of shocking. And probably the most shocked person was Zelenskyy himself. He couldn't believe it. He'd never dealt with an American official who cared primarily, first and foremost, about Americans and American interests. And so he was completely blown off. And I think that one of the things that's kind of interesting about, and obviously, and you all are exactly right about that, the moment that set him off was, that set Trump off, was when Zelenskyy dialed in to into J.D. Vance, which, by the way, is a really weak move. You go for the vice president.
But he's the one who said it to him.
Okay. But that's who you start your fight with. And then, and this is the thing, I think, Trump knows a lot of people who are not good deal makers. He can deal with them. He can work with them. The idea that you would have a guy that is not only not a good deal maker, he has no idea how few cards he has when he walks into this room. Mm-hmm. He has no idea how few options, zero options he has. And he walks in here and he's arrogant and he's pushy and he's demanding. And you pile all that up and you're going to piss off Trump. And what we saw there was a pissed off Trump. So you have somebody, and it's been going on for a long time, where you have this person who is bilking the American taxpayers for hundreds of billions of dollars, and most Americans can't really tell you what our interest is over there.
Can I just add to that about the money and all of this? Obviously, we have given them a ton of money, but 70% of the aid that we have sent to Ukraine has then been spent back in America. So when he, quote unquote, went and campaigned for the Democrats, that he was visiting a munitions factory that was producing weapons that they could then use. And Europe has been, as a share of GDP, almost doubling our investment.
So I'm not an economist, but the idea that you're going to take hundreds of billions of dollars of Americans' taxpayer dollars and light them on fire in Europe, I don't think that helps anybody. All it does is lead to inflation.
All right, stay for the next block, because we've got more on this coming up.